We've all seen a Mario game before. Blue quills, breaks crates, annoying one-liners, the whole deal. What's always been neat about Mario though is that even if you're not a fan of platformers, be they 2D or 3D, he's got your back with a plethora of spin-off games. If your constitution score is too low to properly handle Crash Team Racing, Mario Kart won't bite. The jock of the family can have some fun on Mario Strikers, everyone can get a sadistic enjoyment out of Mario Party, and you know there's at least one person out there who's going to ride or die Mario Golf. But for every Mario spin-off that your own mother could recognize, there's several that you don't see get talked about much, if at all. Not necessarily because they're bad. Well, okay, at least one of them is definitely because it's bad, but for the most part it's just because of how strange they are in the general Mario lineup. I want to talk about what I consider lesser known spin-offs to the Mario games. When weird Mario spin-offs get brought up, it's likely to be stuff along the lines of Hotel Mario or DDR Mario Mix, but I'm not going to cover those today. I feel like the discussion on the former has already been done to death, and discussion on the latter would require exercise. No, the games I'm going to showcase today go one layer lower in terms of how little it feels like they're talked about online. These aren't necessarily obscure, so I'm sorry for being only around 260 words in before lying to you, but these are the ones that just don't get much discussion outside of, hey, remember when they turned Mario into a ball? Mario Pinball Land, developed by Fuse Games, was an attempt to bridge the adventure and pinball genres into an unholy chimera that nobody wanted. I'm not going to lead you on or sugarcoat it, this game sucks. I've always stood on the opinion that there isn't really a bad Mario game, as most examples for a bad Mario game can be excused in one way or another. Lost Levels? They were still kind of figuring out platformers. Hotel Mario? It barely counts as a Mario game if we're being honest. Mario Tennis Ultra Smash? I mean, yeah, it sucks, but at its core, it's still a functioning tennis game that you can play. But Mario Pinball Land is the first Mario game I can look at and say it is inexcusably terrible. No reason for it to exist, no reason for it to be as bad as it is. Go back to start, do not collect 200. First off, it's a pinball game. Those are already kinda hit or miss, as it can be hard to simulate good feeling pinball physics. But the GBA showed it can do them pretty well, with Pokemon and Sonic having a go at pinball spin-offs on the same handheld. Pinball Land, however, does not feel good to play. Mario's physics don't feel right, and unlike previous pinball games on the console, the board isn't tall and follows your ball with the camera, but instead this weird isometric angle that makes it a lot harder to determine where your shots are going to land. Secondly, it's a bad pinball game that's also trying to be an adventure game. Instead of a high score based progression you'd see in many other pinball games, where you just have fun and see how long you can go, Pinball Land asks you to try and hit moving enemies and narrow doorways to make your way through the story like a typical Mario game. If you've played a pinball game before, you know trying to hit moving targets or small gaps is already kind of hard, but that's when you have a standard pinball table and controls to work with. Instead, we have a vertically challenged board and a ball that actually feels like Mario is trying to off himself, and the amount of things that will reset the board makes it feel like a constant 2 steps forward, 5 steps back sort of ordeal. You see these doors you use to access new parts of the table? These narrow, awkwardly placed doors that are already a pain to hit on purpose, let alone get your ball into after you've hit them once to open the door? Well, did you know that if you open one door and accidentally open up a second door when you were just trying to line up a shot through the first door, it closes both of the doors back? Why? What are you doing? It's this kind of awkward wedgie of an experience through it all. Starting off not too horribly with the windmill stage before slowly stretching and hurting your ass with the snowy level that doubles as an underwater level towards the end because they really wanted to see how many pounds of shit they could cram into this 11-gram cartridge. There's this bit where you're expected to somehow bounce off of all these snowmen, put them in the dazed state, but not only do they wake up really fast, but the ones that are already awake throw snowballs at you. And on top of all that, for whatever reason, it doesn't register that I hit them half the fucking time. Actually, that's just a common issue throughout the whole game. Mario sometimes just gently bounces off of enemies, no harm, no foul, and I don't really know why. I can't stress enough how terrible making precise shots like the game wants is. I hit the switch to turn off the windmill and proceed to spend over 30 seconds trying in vain to go into the hole, only to be knocked down by the cruel wasp and the door to that area shuts again. So I then spend several minutes trying to aim at the door, get back up, bounce off the switch uselessly before hitting it correctly, all to get back into the windmill I already entered earlier and defeated the boss in but accidentally fell out of because this game makes a yeast infection sound pleasant. But you want to see the worst instance of door placement in a pinball game? This one at the very start of the ice world. It's smack dab in the center, and for some reason that's the perfect blind spot as I can't seem to find anywhere on my paddles to launch it in there, instead managing to hit every damn Shy Guy that shows up instead. I can now understand why this game is never discussed because it doesn't deserve the air wasted on it. Now, Mario Pinball Land is a game I can understand a little talk around due to its quality, or lack thereof, but on the other hand, I think more people should be talking about Mario and Wario. Developed by Game Freak, who are known for games like Pulse Man on the Genesis, and those RPGs that only have notoriety for including Lydian. One day, Wario drops a bucket onto Mario's head, and this single minor annoyance renders Mario completely unable to function properly, requiring the help of the good fairy Wanda, who has never been seen before or since this game. I wish she would though, her design is kinda cute. Actually, right off the bat, I love the visuals of this game. This was in that era of Nintendo where Wario was still drawn as an oversized goblinoid, and I like it. It works for his antagonistic role here. The general vibe and sprite work is just really pleasant. It doesn't really feel like any other Mario game, with the backgrounds done in these calmer pastels to help the foreground stand out, and said foreground being these big checkered blocks. The closest comparison I can make is like Donkey Kong 94, which I'm always glad to bring that game up, it's a banger. The style in general has this weird spunk to it. Like, obviously the background designs take cues from Mario World, but then you have the enemies which include these birds that look identical to the carpet riding ones in Mario Bros 2, or these little living pot guys. And then Mario in the game looks slightly off. Not bad, but just kinda weird, and I like it, except for Yoshi. Something about this front-facing Yoshi sprite just makes me feel wrong inside, like I did something immoral or evil. Presentation aside, the game itself is just a fun little puzzle game. When the level starts, Mario continually walks forwards, and although the only direct control you have is clicking him to make him turn, you use Wanda to interact with the level and guide Mario to the goal. This is actually one of the few Mario games that utilizes the Super Nintendo mouse, and at least when it comes to emulating it with a modern mouse, it ain't half bad for controlling. It ain't half good either, as it can feel a little awkward keeping up with Mario in some of these more hectic levels, but it's not terrible. And pardon me if I'm wrong, but I almost feel like this is a precursor to the Mario vs. Donkey Kong games with the mini Marios. Like, you can see it too, right? Continually moving little lemming, square aesthetic with blocks you add and remove, simple puzzles that require you to get to the end. I know this type of game existed already and isn't groundbreaking or anything, but it's got a charm to it that makes me like it similarly to the Mario vs. Donkey Kong games. Some of these puzzles can actually be pretty tricky, even just early on. Like in World 2, they introduce these stars to collect, and I swear some of them are just impossible to reach. You get these time blocks that can really push your speed, and I think I managed to softlock myself with the spring puzzle. Or I'm just stupid. Take your pick. But yeah, I got more out of this than I thought, considering, again, it's one of those games that is usually just summed up in a line like, man, remember that weird Mario puzzle game on the Super Nintendo? If you're into these kind of puzzle games like I am, I think you should give it a try. It holds up pretty well. Well, we already have the mouse plugged into our SNES, so how about we take a look at the time Nintendo saw Mario and was like, you know what? I bet he would make a great preschool teacher. Now, of course, I think most of you watching are aware of the Teach is Typing games, whether because you played them yourselves or because of the meme status they've garnered over the years, but we're not going to look at those because, again, they've been looked at plenty. No, I'm talking about the trilogy of games released on old school computers and the Super Nintendo, Mario's early years. These don't feel real, they feel like a shitpost. Somebody at Nintendo dared Software Toolworks to create a point-and-click educational game for the SNES, and they did it surprisingly well. Now, I'm aware of the uphill battle I'm doing trying to discuss games aimed at fetuses, but I really am weirdly impressed by the level of quality. These games were developed by the Software Toolworks, who you're probably at least a bit more familiar with as being the guys behind Mario is Missing and Mario's Time Machine. And yes, I see the guy in the back waving his hand around. They also made the 20th Century Video Almanac. Calm down. Educational, Mario game, and for the SNES are three chunks of a sentence that shouldn't work in the order they're currently in, and although I've already passed preschool a very long time ago, if you couldn't tell, I can still tell this is a solid enough edutainment title. I think I'm more so kinda impressed with how they got this type of game working on the Super Nintendo. I understand it's simple, like really simple, but it works pretty well. The art style is a definite improvement over the devs' last attempt at Mario. We all remember Ouija. These games have a weird visual blend of Super Mario World, Super Mario 3, and whatever janky clip art they could get their hands on. It sits in the weird middle between not quite looking like an official Mario game, but not so bad I worried I got scammed into buying a bootleg. Like, they just straight up used a slightly tweaked Mario World Mario, or this Bowser that I'm fairly positive is just a rework of his Mario 3 sprite. Then we have a front-facing Yoshi that rivals that of Mario and Wario. I no longer feel like I'm committing a sin looking at him, but I just know that he's going to send me to hell for looking anyways. As for the games themselves,
You that starts with...
I mean, they're targeted at preschoolers. What do you want from me? We've got fun with letters, which we learn how to spell simple words, what letters make what sounds, get told the alphabet very, very slowly. All normal edutainment activities. And it's the same for fun with numbers, but, you know, with numbers instead of letters. Preschool fun is a bit different, though, being a mishmash of stuff like counting, names of body parts, and colors, farm animals. I got nothing. I guess if you have a kid and you want to teach them basic preschool level stuff and give them a fondness for the 4th generation of consoles, you could do worse than this. Or, you know, if you want easy points and mastery on retro achievements, I'm not going to shame you, I did the exact same thing for this video. It is now dawning on me that making a video discussing games that I myself introduced as being rarely discussed maybe wasn't the wisest idea. So who here wants to learn how to knit a sweater? I am a teacher, Super Mario Sweater. This was released on the Famicom, the Japanese version of the NES, and it isn't really a game, but it is in fact a sweater knitting tutorial program. You select a pattern, input your dimensions, and you can then follow the directions on your Famicom to knit a sweater. This was only released in Japan, and sadly, I couldn't find a ROM of this game anywhere online that I felt safe to download, and there was no way I was going to get a physical copy for the Famicom I definitely own. So thank you so much to Nintendo Complete for uploading 22 minutes of translated, well, I don't want to say gameplay as there's not really a game here, 22 minutes of demonstration of what the software does. Link will obviously be in the description and up here on screen if you want to go check out the full video yourself. But surprisingly, this wouldn't be the last attempt at this sort of idea, as 15 years later in 2001, Mario Family for the Game Boy Color would release. Its whole title is actually Jaguar Sewing Machine Embroidery-Only Software Mario Family, which, while also being a mouthful, refers to how it was compatible with the Jaguar JN100 sewing machine. Now, despite what you may have assumed about me, I do not own a Jaguar JN100 sewing machine, but I was able to get the ROM for this game, and sure enough, you can select a pattern and color, set the position, and... yeah, unfortunately I do not speak this moon language, so all I can get out of it is stop. But it's quite charming for what is essentially just a selection panel for a sewing machine. The start screen plays a nice rendition of 1-1, all the artwork is official and sourced from instruction manuals or marketing material, and we have more deranged Wario. What's not to love? I guess my confusion is, why the Game Boy Color? I know just about any console having an officially licensed sewing machine accessory would be strange, but this was 2001. Why the dinky little portable brick of all things? I guess I've just never been in the situation of sitting on the bus and thinking, ah shit, I need to sew a Monty Mole onto my pants before I get to Subway. And that's kind of it. I'll be real with you, this video evolved strangely as it went on, from covering Pinball Land before I realized how rancid that game was and I didn't want to play it for the entire video, to seeing what weird Mario spin-offs there were, to realizing most of the really interesting ones have already been done to death, and I was working with table scraps. Except for you, Mario and Wario. You're cool.
Except you stay.
Maybe my standards for weird and wacky spin-offs were too lofty and I should have settled for something more approachable like Hotel Mario, but that's not the wizard way. I look at the stuff nobody else has or will, for better or for worse, and at the end of the day, isn't that something to be proud of? Oh, it's not? Oh well, I tried. Tune in next week where I talk about more TF2 Classified or some shit, because apparently you guys really like that.